Yes, a very good morning to you. It's Thursday, the 15th of October, 2020. Welcome back to the best on-ground weekday kickoff. And if you're watching or listening for the first time, you've picked a very good time of the year to start doing so, because there is an absolute avalanche of sport, and not just sport, but top quality sport. We're into the penultimate weeks of the NRL and AFL finals series. We're heading into a second Bledisloe Cup match. The Sheffield Shield is up and running. And that's not even talking about all the different sport that's happening overseas as well. So as always, there's plenty to talk about. And I'm really pleased to welcome back from NRL.com, Brad Walters on the line today to take you through 5 of the biggest stories making waves in Aussie sport. How are you, Brad?
Yeah, I'm great, Pete. One more sleep until we know who's in who the first team is into the finals, the NRL or grand final, I should say.
Yeah, it's exciting. And I didn't even mention the Spring Carnival as well, which for those of us who enjoy the racing is absolutely heating up too. And we will get your tips for who's going to be the two teams facing off in that NRL Grand Final a little bit later on. But first, let's talk about some of the storylines behind the NRL. And we're going to start with a story from your colleague, Margie McDonald, via NRL.com. And I really liked this piece. It was looking at the relationship and the close friendship between Melbourne Storm coach Craig Bellamy and Canberra Raiders coach Ricky Stuart. Of course, they played together at the Raiders about 30 years ago, and have had a long-lasting friendship and a legacy of respect and understanding for each other and actual love for each other, which is really nice and serves to send the message that sometimes there is a little bit more to life than sport. That being said, they're two competitive beasts, and they'll both be looking to make sure they get the result this week when they face off against one another. Craig Bellamy and Ricky Stuart answered the same questions from Margie McDonald here, and there was some friendly jabs and jibes in advance of that. Stuart said, send me Craig's questions and I'll answer both for you. And then when NRL.com asked the same set of questions, he said, okay, make mine a little bit easier. Craig's a bit smarter than me, or at least that's what he tells everyone. So a bit of banter there, but Bellamy does go on to say the friendship has kept building from our time at the Raiders. When we both moved away from Canberra, we still kept in touch. We've always stayed in touch. I ring him most weeks, and I'll absolutely ring him this week before we play. Do you think that the reason these two great coaches have been so successful is because they are quite similar personalities and they do have some quite similar traits, or do you think they're actually quite different from one another, Brad, and simply complement each other and their friendship bounces off of that?
No, I think they're very similar. I think the reason they're such great mates is because they came through those great Canberra Raiders teams of the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s under Tim Sheens. And I think Tim imparted a great love and understanding of the game and he's encouraged his players to think about the game. And so many of them, players from that era, have got into coaching and other roles in rugby league. And Craig and Ricky, they've been involved in rugby league their entire lives. I've known Ricky longer, or dealt with Ricky longer, because he was such an outstanding player. But they're both really passionate. Both got huge work ethics. They do whatever it takes. There's not enough hours in the day to prepare. And they demand. They're very loyal people, and they demand loyalty from their players. They get loyalty from their players. You don't hear a player who's been at the Melbourne Storm or at the Canberra Raiders say a bad word about Craig Bellamy or Ricky Stuart. But yeah, they're both super competitive. There's no doubt they'll want to win. They'll want to win so that they can get together, which is they're unable to do under the COVID situation. But normally they after the game, one of them would go into the other dressing shed and they'd have a beer together. And basically, they're playing for bragging rights as much as, a place in the grand final this weekend. So, they're two mates who want to get out there, absolutely go hammer and tongs, try and outsmart each other, and hope that their players can get the job done, and then get together afterwards and have a beer and say, you were too good for me this time, or, geez, you got lucky with the referee's call or whatever. But, and I said, they're super competitive. The first time I ever dealt with Ricky, and I wrote a column about this when he was coaching State of Origin, about his passion, but first time as a player that I tried to interview him was after a loss in a State of Origin game, and he told me to F off. And he's such a passionate person, and he's a terrible loser. He's so competitive. And Craig, you just see, have a look, there's a video on the Melbourne Storm's Twitter feed that Cameron Smith took of Craig Bellamy tried to change a tyre yesterday, and you can see even then, like every second word's F. He was really annoyed that the players were laughing at him while he was trying to change a tyre. These guys are just competitive, but that's just a sign of how much a guy like Cameron Smith plays 400 games. He still loves Craig Bellamy.
Yeah, a couple of particular quotes from within the article. Question Margie asked, what's the one trait of the other you wish you had? Craig says of Ricky Stuart, he keeps finding a way to hang in there. He's a very mentally tough bloke. Stuart says of Bellamy, I love his mental toughness and the way he goes and gets what he wants. Then when it comes to what makes him such a good coach, Bellamy says, Stick just gets on well with people, whether he's working with his players and staff inside the club or he's out and about in the community. He's a real personable bloke and he makes a good connection with people. And then Stuart says of Bellamy, people talk about Craig's work ethic and meticulous preparation. He's definitely very good at those two things. But as important as all that is, Craig's genuine relationship and the connection he builds with his players makes him an even better coach. I think I read during the week that traditionally between these two, the winning coach will go into the losing coach's sheds to have a beer after the game. And I dare say they will do that after the action comes to a close this weekend. Our second story this morning looks at the second NRL finals match this week between South Sydney Rabbitohs and the Penrith Panthers. And while it doesn't necessarily speak to, and I don't know of any rift or any reason why Ivan Cleary and Wayne Bennett wouldn't necessarily get on, Wayne Bennett's a bit of an island, right? The super coach is renowned for the way that he uses the media to fire up his team, to put pressure on the opponent, to manipulate the narrative heading into crucial matches. And he's done just that here in an interview with Peter Bedell via the News Corp Australian Newswire. And he's blasted speculation that he held secret talks with former Penrith Supremo Phil Gould, buffeted by 12 months of rumours that he had privately agreed to join Penrith before Penrith chairman Dave O'Neill and the board said to Gould, sorry, we want to go in a different direction and bring Ivan Cleary in. Now, we know Wayne Bennett doesn't like his ego being bruised publicly, and the suggestion that he was overlooked for Ivan Cleary for that Penrith job absolutely appears to have bristled him. Again, we don't know the absolute truth as to whether, he says he never spoke to Phil Gould about the job. He wouldn't know Dave O'Neill if he walked past him, and the only job he ever spoke to anyone about while he was at the Broncos was the West Tigers job, and he said that he was sticking with the Broncos. So it's an interesting read. I don't know if this is classic Wayne Bennett gamesmanship or if this is really him saying it's time to hit the truth button here and stop a story that's spiraled beyond control. How do you take it, Brad? I mean, you work behind the scenes in the NRL game. How genuine do you think suggestions are that Phil Gould was really sought out Wayne Bennett for that Panthers job, and that the board chose to instead return to Ivan Cleary? And do you think this type of communication from Wayne Bennett has any impact on the game this weekend?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think it's got an impact on the game. I don't think Ivan Cleary's going to be too bothered about it, or the players in both teams. I think Wayne Bennett wants to get the message across that he was loyal to the Broncos and that he's loyal to South Sydney. There's been speculation about his future beyond this season, although I think the way the Rabbitohs are performing now, that there's nobody there. Nobody would think that Wayne would want Wayne to leave. But 2 months ago, when he breached the biosecurity protocols, there were people saying, "Oh, he's 70, he's too old, he's losing his marbles, etc., etc." But I think he's proved them wrong since he returned the last 8 matches. I think the background to this story or the Penrith thing, it goes back to back in 2017 when Wayne Bennett and Phil Gould were on the Immortals judging panel, and they hadn't had a lot to do with each other. They obviously knew each other as rival coaches, and they were very instrumental in this idea. They were supposed to select 2 or 3 Immortals, and there were pre-war players and post-war players, and they ended up picking 2 pre-war players, and they also brought in Norm Proven and Mal Meninga, and Dave Brown, Frank Burge, and Dally Messenger were the pre-war players, and that basically was driven by Wayne Bennett and Phil Gould, and they had this sort of developed this relationship out of that. And then I think Phil Gould, I recall in 2018 during the commentary and on Channel 9 programs, he made a number of references that Wayne Bennett wasn't going to be at the Broncos in 2019, which proved to be correct. At the time, Phil Gould was also the general manager of Penrith. the suggestion has always been that Phil Gould went to the Panthers and said, I can get Wayne Bennett as coach. And they said, don't worry, we've got Ivan Cleary lined up, who was then at the West Tigers. And, and that caused all sorts of drama trying to extract Ivan Cleary from the West Tigers. And Phil Gould ultimately left the Panthers when Ivan Cleary came to Penrith. So I think there's a bit of, I think there's a bit of truth to everything. I don't think, I think Wayne Bennett is telling the truth. I think the suggestion that Phil Gould said he could get Wayne Bennett, I think Phil Gould believed that, and I believe that happened as well. And also but the Panthers are trying to say, Ivan Cleary, we're only ever interested in Ivan Cleary. He was our choice. We chose him. We could have had Wayne Bennett, but we chose Ivan Cleary. I think that's really as simple as it gets.
I think we talk about the manipulator of the media. Wayne Bennett's on the back page of the Daily Telegraph, I would assume today, based on this story. And it means we're not talking about his players. We're not talking about their slow starts. We're not talking as much about Penrith's unbelievable form. So that ability to change the narrative, it's something we see in Eddie Jones as another master of that. And I can't help but think that the timing here is quite targeted from Wayne Bennett. But I'm with you. I don't really see it having an influence on the match this weekend. Before we move to other sports, just really quickly, I do need to know, Brad, you're the man in the know. Who's going to win the two finals this weekend, and what are we going to see?
Well, the Panthers are the minor premiers. They're unbeaten in 16 games. They're just playing with so much confidence and belief. I really think that they can win that game and go through to a grand final. And I think the Canberra Raiders are they're playing with nothing to lose attitude. They've overcome the loss of Josh Hodgson. Again, they've got great belief. They throw the ball around. I think that'll trouble Melbourne. And I believe it. I think we're going to be in for a Panthers-Raiders grand final. Wind the clock back to 1990 or 1991, and really the Chocolate Soldiers versus the Green Machine.
Fantastic! What a spectacle that would be, and four teams that are fantastic to watch and have their own great storylines about them. Our third story today, and we turn to rugby union and the Bledisloe Cup. The second match this Sunday afternoon at Eden Park in Auckland, after, of course, the 16-all draw in the first test in Wellington. It was the first test for new All Blacks coach Ian Foster, and also, of course, for Wallabies coach Dave Rennie. John Plumtree, the All Blacks assistant coach, has come out and had some interesting quotes yesterday in regards to the way that the first match was officiated. He said that, asked whether the All Blacks expected the Wallabies' much improved performance. Plumtree went on the offensive. This is via Christy Doran at rugby.com.au. He said, we knew there'd be some similarities. We knew that was coming. And then he goes off on almost a bit of a tangent, says the type of play on the field has got to be dealt with by the ref. There were several occasions where there were some off-the-ball incidents. It's got to be dealt with properly on the field. We've got to be able to adjust to that as well. And I think you'll probably see a couple of senior players in particular pretty fired up. Referee sees what they see, and if Paul Williams missed stuff, then he's missed it. But if it's a consistent habit and it's not being looked at, then obviously we've been disappointed. We haven't had those conversations with the referee, but it is what it is. It goes on to say, All Blacks don't cry, we get on with it. But he's the one who's thrown this conversation into the narrative. I mean, arguably, the two most contentious decisions of the test match were the fact that for the first try, Rieko Ioane had stepped into touch, and that wasn't called back. That was right in front of the touch judge's eyes. And then arguably at the end, the rookie Tupu Vaya came in from the side and really should have given away a penalty right in front of the posts in the 84th minute for the Wallabies to win the test. So I want to know how you interpret John Plumtree's quotes here. Is this just typical textbook All Blacks trying to control the narrative, trying to put pressure on Australian referee Angus Gardner, who will be the first Australian to referee a Bledisloe Cup match in a long, long time? Or is this showing that the All Blacks, they're a bit rattled and they don't necessarily have the same aura and the same control that they've had, for so long?
I think they're rattled, which is great, fantastic to see, isn't it? Australia's got nothing to lose, the Wallabies. No one expected anything of them. We came out and took them by surprise. I thought the most interesting line in Christie's story was actually about the fears that maybe the All Blacks have appointed the wrong coach, because I know, there's people that would have thought Dave Rennie would have been ideal as the All Blacks coach, but he's not part of the system that they've got over there, and they seem to just, the coach seems to be pre-anointed. Foster, everyone knew Foster was going to get the job going into the World Cup, and that's how it's always been. It's sort of like you come in, you're part of their system, then you get the next job, and instead of necessarily looking more broadly to see who the best candidate was, and and I think they really fear the fact that we've got Dave Rennie as the coach. He may, many people in New Zealand think that he was the best option to be the All Blacks coach, and I think they're really concerned about what he can do for Australian rugby and for the Wallabies. And I think that's actually the real issue, that they're rattled and they're worried.
I think there's a stat in Christie's article that, if I just try and find it quickly here, there was a survey done earlier this year by NZME, which showed that almost half of New Zealand's Super Rugby players didn't want Foster as their coach, while another quarter of the players didn't want the men he appointed as his assistants in the role either. He's only got the 2-year contract, which is pretty unusual and pretty unprecedented. And besides Dave Rennie, you've obviously got Scott Robertson, who's been incredibly successful for the Crusaders and New Zealand under-20s over there, and is young, is dynamic, is the opposite of Ian Foster in every sense of the word. And if Foster and the All Blacks were to lose this match on Saturday against the Wallabies, on Sunday against the Wallabies at Eden Park, the pressure would be absolutely huge. That being said, if we have a look at the last 5 matches played by the two teams at this venue, the cumulative score is 205-55 in favour of the All Blacks. So it's a major hurdle to overcome, and we'll just have to see how it goes. For what it's worth, I'm with you. I think they're rattled, and I absolutely bloody love it. Our penultimate story today, we move to the AFL Finals Series. Story from Sam Landsberger in the News Corp Australia Newswire. And he's got some good quotes from Richmond coach Damien Hardwick around Jack Riewoldt, and the fact that Jack Riewoldt didn't have a huge impact on the statisticians sheet anyway last week in the win for Richmond against St Kilda. He warmed up for Friday night's preliminary final against Port Adelaide at Adelaide Oval with just 4 disposals and his first goalless game since round 3. Barring 2 games where he was injured in the first 15 minutes, he's never had fewer disposals in his 281-game career. They've had 100 days in the hub now, Richmond. Back in round 11 when they played Port Adelaide, it was their season worst differentials for disposals, for contested ball, for inside 50s, points from turnovers, and they got absolutely dominated in the clearances as well. Should they be concerned heading into this match that Jack Riewoldt's out of form, that Port Adelaide had their measure so comfortably earlier this year, that Port Adelaide have had the extra week off during finals? Are Richmond under pressure here?
They're under huge pressure. I think they're going to go out the back door here. It's really hard to stay up, and this is they're aiming for their 3rd title in 4 years. It's pretty, we saw last weekend with the Roosters, or the last few weeks with the Roosters, who'd been so dominant, even for much of this season, but for the last 2 years or 3 years, at the back end of the year when they fell away, they just couldn't lift themselves again. And I think Richmond's in the same boat. They lost in the first week of the finals to the Lions. I think they're going to do it really tough. I can't see them turning it around to beat Port Adelaide. So no, I just think that ship sailed for them. Unfortunately, they've gone close, but I think that I think the planets have aligned against them. There's too many things that they will have to overcome this weekend.
Yeah, nonetheless, not least the rabid Port Adelaide crowd at Adelaide Oval. Must be said, though, and pointed out by Sam Landsberger in this article, the AFL has seen the Tigers as the best learners in the competition during their golden run in the last few years. In 2017, in finals, they were able to reverse regular season fixture results against Geelong, GWS and Adelaide. They did it against Geelong last year, and they already did it against St Kilda this year. So with that in mind, they're saying, Landsberger's suggesting don't read too much into the round 11 result against Port Adelaide. Richmond will have some key inclusions who didn't play in that match. But yeah, the pressure is absolutely on them, and that extra week's rest, playing at home, it's pretty hard to look past Port Adelaide in this one. Our final story today, a really good one from Greg Baum in The Age. He talks us through the situation with coronavirus and its impact on sport globally in comparison to its impact on sport in Australia. Of course, football superstar Cristiano Ronaldo is the latest big-name athlete to test positive for coronavirus. He doesn't even know this happened to him, says Portugal coach Fernando Santos, to which Greg Baum says, evidently this is meant to be reassuring, and that's how it seems to have been received in Europe. But it's hard to imagine there'd be so little angst in Australia if a Patrick Dangerfield, a Cameron Smith, a Pat Cummins came down with the bug. He looks to the case that the US President, the British Prime Minister, a dozen or more soccer stars, a Grand Tour cycling winner, world #1 golfer Dustin Johnson, and 10 of his mates on the PGA Tour have all gone down with coronavirus. That the experts are concerned about the spikes in the virus in the Northern Hemisphere, and he compares it to here, and the fact that it's been quite remarkable that we've been able to see the AFL and NRL seasons resumed and looking like they will be completed. The same with Super Netball. The A-League completed its season. Cricket looks like it's going to go ahead, and we've found inventive and creative ways in which, by employing hub environments and being proactive and thinking on their feet, administrators have managed to get their seasons away. Do you think in general it's a surprise that all of these competitions have managed to be completed in Australia? And do you think credit really deserves to go to the administrators?
Yeah, to the administrators and the players. I think so the administrators have been really agile. We've adapted. Like when the second wave came in Victoria, then teams moved interstate. When there's been outbreaks in places, games were moved, teams were moved. We went into created hubs for the AFL. NRL players have been living in bubbles for 6 months. Have been under really strict conditions. The players have, for the players to have abided by the rules that were put in place to ensure that the competitions could continue it's been nothing short of amazing. And there have been a few breaches, but nothing serious and nothing that has impacted on the competition. I think there was a Super League game between Wigan and Catalans, which has been postponed overnight because Wigan players have contracted the virus. It's happening in rugby union in the UK. It's happening in Super League regularly. All sports. It just seems to be players are testing positive. We've had no players test positive during any of our major sporting competitions because they've all the rules that were set in place have been really regimented, and the players have abided by those, and the administrators have been prepared to change the rules whenever they've needed to, with agreements from the players and the players' associations to ensure that the competitions could continue. I mean, we had the Warriors come over here and stay for 5 months on the Central Coast. I just think and plus, look, community transmissions are very, very low. You can pretty much go to Queensland and it's life as normal, but it's the players that are up there, the teams that are up there, they're having to live in certain environments to ensure that the competitions are able to be completed. But I think hats off to everyone who's done that. And I think we've shown here in Australia that we could host major sporting events. If they want to bring the Premier League out here, or they want to bring, if they're concerned about in the Northern Hemisphere about their ability to be able to maintain competitions, they could bring them out here, and we know how to host hubs and bubbles, and we do all of those things. And I think maybe that could be a benefit going down the track, because I don't see it getting better anytime soon in the Northern Hemisphere, in the United States and in Europe. In fact, it only seems to be getting worse.
Yeah, and it gives us great encouragement ahead of the Australian Open in January, ahead of the Test Series with India coming out here, that we don't have the same trepidation, perhaps. You see the NFL season's only a few weeks old and already there's some concerns there. And, the way that our administrators, and to your point, absolutely, our players have been able to come together and get this season away, any issues or any incidents have been very much a surprise rather than the expectation, and that's an absolute credit to them. Brad, fantastic to have you on the show, mate. Love talking to you about sport and particularly about NRL. 2 massive NRL matches this weekend, and really looking forward to catching up with you again next week on the Best On Ground Weekday Kickoff to preview the NRL Grand Final, and time will tell whether your prediction that it is a Panthers-Raiders match is what we're talking about. But thanks so much again for coming on the show, and look forward to talking again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Pete.
And tomorrow, looking forward to crossing over the ditch to Paul Cully from stuff.co.nz, who's going to preview the Bledisloe Cup. That's always a lot of fun. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Cheers.